This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing all right. Happy opening day for all you baseball fans out there. Um, Welcome to my seminar on my Handicap Committee seminar series on handicap reviews. My name's Jim Douglas, Director of Handicapping at the CGA, for those who don't know me. Looking at this presentation yesterday. Oh, by the way, you can ask questions. You can unmute yourself. We've got a small crowd. Just about everybody's joined and has registered, I think. You can, of course, unmute yourself at any time, as well as you can hit the chat. I'll have that monitored as well. Yeah, I was looking at this presentation yesterday. It might seem like it might jump around and go back and forth and not really flow as well, but it all kinds of ties together and hopefully all makes sense at the end as I discuss handicap reviews just in general. So let's just dive right in and get to it here. So I get to the right screen. Yeah. All right. Um, Very good. What is a handicap review? Um, it's the procedure carried out by the Handicap Committee to determine if the handicap index of any member who has designated that golf club as their home club needs to be adjusted. So it's covered in Rules 7.1 and Appendix D in our Rules of Handicapping. When do you perform a handicap review? Uh, the Handicap Committee has the discretion to conduct a handicap review at any time. It is strongly recommended that the Handicap Committee conducts a review at least annually for all members who have designated that club as their home club. And as we'll find out later, I think all of you are hopefully all aware of the new handicap review tool, and I'll be discussing that. There's going to be a big update to that in a couple of weeks, and there's going to be probably some changes around handicap reviews uh, at that time that may require a handicap review to be done manually. Have this tool run manually, or tool run at least once a year. We'll talk about that. I'll kind of do. I'm going to have a little sneak preview of the update to this handicap review tool. Uh, and oh, but of course, the handicap review may also be conducted, at the request of a player at any time by that player or by another player. So typically, uh, you'll want to do a handicap review if you or somebody at the club feels that a golfer could be manipulating their handicap index in order to gain an advantage. The dreaded S word, sandbagger, as we try to avoid. But most often, the question I get most often about handicap reviews are golfers that are coming back from an injury or an illness or time away from the game, recovering from some sort of condition or what have you. That's really where we get the most case for doing to modifications that I'm running into. Um, there are some considerations for the handicap review before making any adjustment to a player's handicap index, whether you're moving that handicap index up or down. The handicap committee should carefully consider all available evidence, including whether the player's scoring potential has been affected by a temporary or permanent injury, illness, or disability, which is significant enough to impact the player's ability to play with or against all players on a fair and equitable basis. And that's what we're trying to do, keep things fair and equitable. Um, Consider any previous handicaps held by the player, especially applies when uh, golfer has had some time away from the game. What was their handicap index before? Um, or is that player's ability rapidly improving or decline? The key word there being rapidly, um, gradual improvement or declining of golfer's ability. That's kind of could be expected here or there, but rapid improvement or at rapid declining is something you may need to account for as the handicap committee. And then of course, and I'll touch on this a little more later, whether the player's performance is significantly different in one format versus another format. Compared to one format compared to another. For example, between organized competitions and general play, and even unauthorized or authorized format of play. Yeah, we'll certainly talk about comparing competition rounds versus casual rounds. And then finally, has it been determined that the player's actions, whatever they've done, are for the purpose of gaining an unfair advantage? whatever they may have done, posted incorrect scores, what have you. Uh, is that done to gain an unfair advantage? So very common scenario, like I mentioned, golfer coming back from an injury, illness, time away from the game. What do we do? What do we adjust that handicap index to? That's usually I'll get the call. Golfer's coming back from surgery. What do I adjust his handicap to? Well, it kind of depends. We're First thing we'll want to do is look at how many scores have been posted since uh, the golfer has come back from the illness or injury. Sometimes I'll get that question before they've even posted around yet. Need to have a couple rounds to have a good idea of what to adjust their handicap index to. How many? That's kind of how many you need, up to you and how well you know the golfer. I'd probably say 3 or 4 or even 5. It's probably a good number to work with. And you can base it, so then you can take how many scores they've had since that change, base your new handicap index using only those values. And we'll talk about how to implement that and a modification to that handicap index here in a little bit. Um, then, of course, we're going to also want to look at how long is that recovery going to be? Is it going to be just a couple months? Is it going to be a year? Is the change could the whatever has happened to the golfer could be a permanent change? We might need to account for that. Every case is a little bit different. We're kind of attacking it the same way, but every case is going to be a little bit different. So that's why we'll want to monitor and re-review at various intervals. So check up on the golfer's scores every month, 2 months, depending on how frequently they play. Uh, a review could also involve the analysis of any or all of the following information. These kind of apply more to the golfer who might be manipulating their handicap, but these can and will apply to golfers that have had the medical condition of a change in their game for the bad. So what do we look at when doing a handicap review? Uh, Obviously, the player's scoring record. What do their scores records look like? Are they consistent or inconsistent? Consistency is always a good sign. The handicap system loves consistency. I like consistency. It's kind of easy to see, hey, what's going on here. Golfers that are inconsistent, up or down, they're tougher to evaluate what's going on, but they can also certainly raise some question marks. Why are they going up and down so much, so frequently? And same goes for the handicap index history. We can look at the history. The GIN software shows the last 12 months. We can easily see the bar graph down there on the screen and see how their trends are. Are they up and down? Are they consistent? Up, maybe just up, a rise, and then a fall. Just use that to make an evaluation. One thing I look at in looking at handicaps at a scoring record of a golfer, timeliness of score posting. Our scores posted in batches of 2, 3, 4, or even more. Our scores posted chronologically. That's one of the requirements of the rules of handicapping. Post your scores chronologically, as well as on the day that it's played. How many scores have been posted in let's say, the last 12 months versus previous 12 months? Is the golfer posting a lot more scores than they have in the past? Are they posting a lot fewer scores in the past? I've seen scoring records where the golfer had about half as many scores one year. I'm like, this golfer has consistently played the same number of rounds for the previous 3 years. Why is he all of a sudden not posting as many scores? As mentioned, comparing the average score differentials between competition rounds and casual rounds. That's a big one to look at for golfers who might be manipulating. Golfers typically don't do better in competitions. There's more pressure, you're putting everything out, that sort of thing. Comparing that score differential average. If they're much better in competitions than casual rounds, then we might say, yeah, there might be something going on here. They may say, well, I'm concentrating more, but that's not always a good excuse out of that. Our number of away scores. Away scores in itself isn't uh, there's nothing against the rules of handicapping for having a lot of away scores, but it can be something that can say, if this golfer is posting a lot of away rounds, is he really are these away rounds all much higher than the home scores? Which, away scores can be higher just because you're playing a different course. But it's that if that's a kind of a consistent trend, maybe there could be something going on there. Are there any exceptional score reductions? So those scores where they've had an ESR reduction. Um, oh, sorry, telephone, go away. Sorry about that. Let me put a damper on that right now. I am busy. All right, sorry about that. Let me get back to the right screen here too. Exceptional score reductions. Yeah, those scores where you've done golfers has a net score differential of 7.0 or below, where it applies a -1 score reduction, or if it's 10 better, a -2 score reduction. Those I always look at carefully. Is that, was that a competition round even? Something to look at. Something that can show maybe the true potential of the golfers, of the golfer. Does the golfer post scores hole by hole? Again, not a requirement in the rules of handicapping to post hole by hole, but it's something I prefer. I tend to think that if a golfer is posting hole by hole, they're kind of taking things a little more seriously, and really want to post a correct score. Though I've seen scores posted hole by hole that were clearly probably fabricated, 4 4 4, or like, 5 5 5 5, just all the same numbers just straight across. That's not an accurate score at all. Um, and then results from running a handicap review on our new handicap review tool. This will be a handy tool if you haven't seen it to help you make a judgment as to what to do with a golfer, whether going up or down. So yeah, I talked a little bit about timeliness of score posting. So here's an actual scoring record I came across not too long ago. That has a couple of examples of things to look at. So our scores posted on the day of play, or it's one of those shoulds in the rules of handicapping. We want players to post on the day of play. We can easily tell, hey, they posted at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you can see this details, by the way, in the score maintenance tab in the admin portal. There's the handicap management tab is your first screen or your first tab, and the second tab over is your score maintenance tab. I'll always jump to this and start looking at the days that the date and time that scores are posted. Oh, by the way, I mentioned hole by hole. You can tell that a golfer's posted hole by hole if you click on the edit. It'll show those hole by hole scores. Other than that, it'll show the totals. You can also run reports to figure some of that out, but I like to just click the edit. I can see the hole by hole scores there. But back to the timeliness, yeah, you can see if they posted a score at 8 in the morning, then they surely didn't post on the day of play. Uh, yeah, and sometimes you'll see us, once in a while, a golfer may say that they may have posted just the morning, the day after a round, and that happens once in a while. But if it's kind of consistent, that's something a behavior the golfer should correct. Yeah, so if too many scores are posted in the morning, consistently posting scores on the next day, that's something that a behavior that should be corrected and maybe be a cause for concern. Our scores often posted in batches. So we can see this golfer posted 3 scores in a row here to 3 different clubs. Those are always concerned, batch postings. Now, the one time I kind of let it go, if you will, or when they've clearly been on a trip somewhere, they've gone to Myrtle Beach or they've gone to Scotland and they don't post their scores while they're on vacation. Yes, they should be posting scores on the day of play, but usually that's one I'll kind of overlook. But for a regular golfer just playing around in the neighborhood and in the area, this is something that shouldn't happen and should be talked to about the golfer or talked with to the golfer, and then you can use this in your judgment of the player's scoring record. And then finally, our scores posted out of chronological order. So we can see these 3 scores were not posted chronologically. Scores need to be posted chronologically. If they're posting scores going forward, then they post one, back a couple days. Why did they do that? Are they trying to fudge their handicap, manipulate their scoring record? Well, these are the kind of things I'll look at, and I'll go back over the past year, maybe even two, depending on the golfer and how frequently they play. All right, so kind of talked about looking at scores. One thing I like to do, and hopefully you have somebody in your handicap committee or you yourself or have a little bit of skill with Excel. Scoring record can easily be exported to an Excel file. And then from there, you can easily sort on ranges. You can easily get the average of the competition score differentials, compare that to the casual score differentials, look at your away score differentials, that sort of thing. Very handy to do is to export to Excel. Though I will mention the new updated review tool that's coming out does have some score analysis features that they've added that will be pretty handy, including comparing casual rounds to competition rounds. We'll look at that later. So I've talked about the handicap review tool, so we're going to jump over to that. Like I said, this presentation is going to bounce around a little bit, so I apologize, but it'll all come together. So if you haven't seen it, uh, here's the handicap review tab that shows up under the golfer. So we've had the handicap management tab, score maintenance tab, where I was looking at those score posted dates, and then our relatively new handicap review tab that we can currently run individually on a golfer, but we'll soon be able to run club wide. So we're going to click on that handicap review tab, and then we can run a handicap review on the golfer. And that handicap review tool looks at the scores over the past 12 months and it takes the golfer's handicap index at the time the review is run and says, okay, how many scores are too high out of an expected range from that handicap index, and how many scores are too low outside of an expected range for that handicap index. And then it'll flag those scores. I paused you, phone. Yeah, so once you run a handicap review, turn this phone off again. I'm sorry, folks. I shouldn't ring at all. Do not disturb is what I want to click. Haha. There we go. All right, back to the handicap review tool. So here's an example of what the screen looks like if the handicap review determined that an adjustment was required. So here's an example of a golfer that we ran a handicap review on that the system has recommended an adjustment of -2 for that golfer. So golfers had 164 rounds over the past 12 months. The total number of they had no high flags and they had 12 what they call low flags, scores too low or lower than outside an expected range based on that golfer's handicap index. So it gives you the percentage and then the recommended adjustment. And if we clicked on the details button, we get a pop-up screen where it'll show us some extra stats as well as be able to see those flag scores and look at those flag scores and take and analyze them from there. So the recommended adjustment from here can be applied through the new review tool. So the handicap committee can apply the adjustment or deny the adjustment and move on and go on. If the adjustment is applied, a -2 is applied to each of the last 20 score differentials to adjust that handicap index down, and I'll show you an example of that too later. So we're still back in this handicap review tool. If you first time you go into a golfer, click under the handicap review. Let me go back to that screen. Once we click on that, if we're back on this handicap review tab, we're going to see this handicap review. We may see a handicap review history. So there's no handicap reviews there on that screen. But here's an example of a golfer where the handicap review has been run a few times in the past, and it'll show you the history, when the review was run, and the results of that review at that time, how many the percentage of the low flags. So we can see that history there. So jumping out of the review tool, and I'm going to go back to that in a little bit. The rules of handicap. So how do we adjust a handicap index? What are our options? So within the rules of handicapping, it talks about two methods to adjust the handicap index. So the first thing we can do is reset the handicap index by applying an adjustment to each of the most recent 20 score differentials. That's how that adjustment in the handicap review tool works, but you can also do it manually. You can make an adjustment this way without having the handicap review tool determining that there's a recommended adjustment. So that allows for the handicap index to be updated as new scores are posted. And the handicap committee can remove that adjustment at any time if they determine that the adjustment is no longer warranted. A re-review after 2 months. Okay, we can remove this adjustment. The other method is freezing the handicap index at a level selected by the handicap committee for a defined period of time. During this a player's handicap will not be updated as new scores are posted, though there is an option to freeze only against upward movement. So you have a golfer, you want to set that golfer's handicap index to 17.5. That golfer's handicap index will stay at 7, won't get above 17.5, but if they happen to post rounds that are good and gets that handicap index naturally below that number, it'll be allowed to go down. The handicap committee, of course, can remove the freeze upon the handicap index at any time, and then the scores in this player's scoring record are then used to calculate the player's handicap index as normal. So those are the two methods discussed in the rules of handicapping. But really, there's a third method, and this one happens a bit, especially with our illness and injury. It's the golfer stuck on a soft cap or hard cap. That'll often happen. The golfers come back from an injury or illness and been playing a lot, and they're stuck on that hard cap. Hey pro, why is my handicap index stuck at 21? I'm shooting 105 here. So what we can do here is reset the golfer's low handicap index. Since the committee does have the ability to override soft and hard cap in circumstances such as injury or illness. I like this method. This is I like this method if it's a possibility. It works well when the golfer's got a full set of 20 scores that are post illness, injury, surgery. And it also works well when recovery might be slow going or maybe even not possible. This allows the golfer's handicap index to kind of evolve naturally. It's not taking into account the caps, but it gets that golfer going, gets them into a number that represents their ability. But actually, really, there's a fourth method for adjusting a handicap index. After a number of scores have been submitted and it becomes evident that the player's condition has caused a permanent change to their ability, it may be appropriate to just disregard the player's scoring record and allocate a handicap index using only the scores submitted since the illness, injury, or temporary disability occurred. So pretty much starting over. So that's an option. That option can be a little trickier to implement. There's not an easy way to do it in the admin portal. We can't just go into the admin portal, say, start this golfer over as of January 1. We can delete old scores, all the scores prior to the illness or injury, but a lot of times there can be years of scores and you're going to get carpal tunnel clicking on to delete all those scores. And if that's the case, we could consider creating a new account for the golfer, creating a new GIN number. Issue there, though, that's an extra handicap fee for the year if it happens during the regular year. That's our drawback there, and there's not really a way around that. So that's our fourth method. All right. There are some requirements the handicap committee needs to have in mind when doing a handicap review. The handicap review, or one requirement is that the the modification be applied only after the player has been informed and has had an opportunity to respond to the handicap committee. And that's whether you're adjusting that handicap index up or down. the player must have a recourse to some sort of an appeals procedure. You know, please respond to the handicap committee within 3 days if you have an appeal on this handicap modification. Modifications are required to be at least one stroke, whether you're going up or down. No half shot adjustments. You have to do at least one stroke. You have to make it worthwhile. And then finally, we only should increase the player's handicap index by up to 5.0 above the player's low handicap index, unless there are exceptional circumstances. Such circumstances could include a player who has long-term illness or injury preventing them from playing golf at the level they previously attained. So that's a requirement in the rules of handicapping, one that I've overridden. We've overridden with handicap committees plenty of times. But one stroke upward or downward, and then inform the golfer. Now, there could be some changes coming along this related to the handicap review tool update. That's to be determined for sure. But there's might be some tweaks to that with this review tool. So I am going to be once that gets released, it's supposed to be released, the update, the week of April 7th. So that's the current schedule. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed. Once that's out there, I'm going to follow up with some details about it and probably have a couple online demos of the new feature. I don't do this. We don't do this a lot. Haven't run into this a lot, but I will just mention that there is the option to withdraw a handicap index. The handicap committee or us here at CGA should withdraw the handicap index of a player who deliberately or repeatedly, I like to say really deliberately and repeatedly, fails to comply with the player's responsibilities under the rules of handicapping. The withdrawal of a player's handicap index should be applied only after the player has been informed and has had an opportunity to respond to the handicap committee or the CGA. And if you do happen to withdraw a player's handicap, I wouldn't mind being made aware of that, just because the golfer may come straight to us on that one. And then a player must be notified the length of time their handicap index will be withdrawn, and any additional conditions, such as maybe requiring that particular golfer to return scorecards during that time. All right, so now I'm going to jump a little into and touch on the actual mechanics in the admin portal of modifying a handicap index, because it is tricky. It isn't the most intuitive feature of the Gen admin portal. So I'm kind of going to talk about how that works. So if we're on our golfer, so I just did a little screen capture here. We're going to modify the handicap index through that admin portal within that first handicap management tab. And we have our options up here. I'll go from right to left. Special update that basically runs a handicap index recalculation on the golfer. So if you happen to needed to batch post a couple back older scores for a golfer, you could run a special update, get that golfer's handicap up to speed. Here's the button to withdraw golfer's handicap index. We're going to talk about modifying the low handicap index, which is here, and then modifying the handicap index button here. So it comes up with a pop-up. This is kind of where I wish they'd improve it. These pop-ups kind of they just work funny. It's into the way I would do things. So we have our pop-up when we're modifying our handicap index. So we have our two options. One is adjusting the last 20 score differentials, and then one is the set handicap index, which I mentioned. They call it the freezing the handicap index. So we're setting that handicap index to a specific value. So we're going to choose, so this example, we're choosing that option to set that handicap index to a specific value. And so I've chosen here to modify this golfer's handicap index to a 20.0. Very important, and sometimes this gets overlooked. Select an appropriate expiration date for that setting for that handicap index modification to expire. And what do we choose for an expiration date? Choose a date in the future down the road that's appropriate for that situation. Like I said, they're all situations could be a little different, but 30 days out, 60 days out, 90 days out, whatever is appropriate for the situation. set that expiration date. And here's that option to modify handicap index against upward movement only. Doesn't usually cause any harm to check that button. Again, golfers can get better than the 20.0 in this 20.0 in this case. And we do get a warning here. Hey, this value is more than 5 strokes greater than the golfer's low handicap index. If this is okay, press save. Either way, we have to hit the save button to get that modification set. But here's your values. There's your expiration date. To get that modification, handicap index modification set, and then re-review the golfer at various intervals as well as you get close to the expiration date. Again, always depending on your situation. If you've set that modification to go 90 days, you take a look halfway through. Hey, is this golfer need to be adjusted any further? Then the second option, the adjusting the score differentials. So here's our example here. We have chosen to adjust the score differentials. We're going to choose our adjustment. We don't put negative or positive here. We just choose our adjustment, and then we click the option for whether we're moving that handicap index upwards or downwards, and then clicking save. So that's our second option of adjusting the last. So this again puts an adjustment on the last 20 score differentials, essentially changes that golfer's handicap index by that value, and then that adjustment works its way off as they post scores. And second option, our third option to modify golfer's handicap index is by modifying that low handicap index. Again, a good one for a golfer who's stuck on a cap and is not going to get off that cap anytime soon. But we can modify that low handicap index by clicking that button there. And I have a simple screen here where we choose the new low handicap index. The system won't let you set a low handicap index higher than the current handicap index. And it actually won't let you go above 5 above that low handicap index either. So if you need to move that low handicap index above 5, let me know. I've got a little funky workaround for it. I tricked the system. I won't go into detail, but I can work through that. But anyway, usually pushing that up to usually I'll set this value equal to the handicap index. And then again, important to set the expiration date, especially see, I made this slide a couple of weeks ago. The default expiration date is like today or tomorrow, or today or the next day. And so sometimes I've had people set that low handicap index, but don't change the expiration date. And then 2 days later, the golfer's back on the hard cap, if you will. So anyway, set your low handicap index, set that expiration date, hit save, should be good to go. Again, select the appropriate expiration date, and just as in the other review, re-review at various intervals as well as near the expiration date. How to undo a modification. So there's a couple ways to undo the modification if you need to for whatever reason. So when the handicap index or low handicap index has been set, removal of the modification is easy to accomplish. So those modify HI and modify low HI buttons simply turn into remove HI and remove low HI buttons. So I've got an example here of both being adjusted, and we can click either the remove the handicap index modification or remove the low handicap index modification. I think we just get a confirmation screen and we're done. If you've modified a golfer by adjusting score differentials, either manually or through that new review tool, it's a little trickier. It's a couple steps process to undo that, but it can be done. So we're going to find the golfer's scoring record. So when the handicap index or low handicap index has been modified, I'm sorry, the low handicap index. I got to fix that mistake. The low handicap index can't be modified by adjusting score differentials. Just the handicap index can be modified by score differentials. Ignore that. I'm sorry. So either through it's the manual or through the review tool, you follow these steps. So we're going to go to the scoring record, and we're going to find the most recent score, the first score, the most recent score that has the adjustment. So here's the golfer where it's right at the top of the screen. Here's our first score that has an adjustment right here. And so we're going to click the edit button, and the edit button has a pop-up screen that has the score and the course rating and the slope and the tees that were played. But at the bottom, it's going to have this new option, an additional option to remove the score differentials. We're going to click that remove the score differential button. Oops. Oh my goodness. We're going to click that remove score differentials button, and then we're going to click confirm. And then we're going to have to run a special update right after that out here. So once we've removed the score differentials, we'll click the special update button, and then we're done. All right. Going to touch on a few screenshots of the new review tool that I've been able to see. So kind of as expected, if you're logged into the admin portal, you'll see your club's name here, your roster, and then they'll have a new handicap review tab on this screen. And we'll have an option to click new handicap review. And this will run this review tool that analyzes the scoring records of all your golfers. It'll run through and analyze all those scoring records. And then upon completion of the running of the tool, you'll see a screen that looks similar to this, where we'll have a list of golfers that are recommended for adjustment. So this screen, it'll shows us there's 16 golfers that were recommended for adjustment. No adjustment recommended is 112. Several golfers are ineligible for review. There's various reasons. They didn't have this club wasn't their home club. They don't have a full record of 20 scores. A couple different things. But here we can see the status of the review is pending. The recommended adjustment, scores posted over the past year, high flags and low flags, and then we can view the details, the specific details, and then we'll get in here, and then we can click our check boxes and either apply or deny the adjustment on those golfers. And again, more will come, more details will get. Well, I'll let you know of all the further details on how this works, and again, I have a couple demos about it with it once that gets released and gets official, gets that out there for us to use and see. But that's just kind of a sneak preview of how that'll work. It should be a nice tool, and there may be, like I said, there may be some requirements to have your club will probably be required to run this at least once a year on your roster. But again, more details on that to come. I know just an overview of kind of how this works. The more scores in a player records, the player has a pleasant scoring record, the more flags are required against abnormal score differentials. So here's the table that it uses for flag scores for recommending an upward adjustment. You know, if they have, say, for example, 40 scores in the 12 months, if they have 5 or more scores that are too high, it's going to recommend an upward adjustment. And just a reminder, the review period is 12 months. And there's a less of a tolerance for pushing that handicap index downwards. So here's a table for flag scores for the system to recommend a downward adjustment. So again, if they had 40 scores, if they only had 4 or more low flagged low scores, it'll recommend an adjustment. Not to get too much into the weeds in this review tool, but it's an automatic process. It's an iterative process. So if this basically what this system does, it'll run through, say it'll running through my handicap. If it says, oh, he should be adjusted by 1, it'll internally adjust that handicap index to 1 and then rerun the tool and say, okay, this golfer should be adjusted by 2, and so on and so forth. Usually 1 or 2 is what we'll see. 3 or 4 is pretty rare, but we can see it. Yeah, so the analysis shows an upward adjustment of 2 to a player's index is sufficient. That will be the recommendation to the handicap committee. Just a couple of screenshots to kind of show how the adjustment from the review tool works, or if you manually adjusted score differentials. So here's a player's scoring record before the adjustments applied. Last 20 score differentials have a -1 adjustment. Lowered that handicap index from the 7.4 that we saw here to a 6.4. And then as scores get posted, 3 scores posted since the adjustment, the golfer's handicap's not quite as affected by the adjustment as much. Still affected, but not as much. All right, I think I've run through the entirety of the slides on handicap reviews. Let me just touch on that I've got a few more of these handicap committee seminars, one where I'm going to discuss holes out of play, 9 holes that are closed, weather and poor conditions. One that I'll talk about preferred lies, mulligans, that sort of thing. I've got one more scheduled for stroke index allocation, also known as handicap holes. And I'm getting these seminars loaded on we have a YouTube channel. So I'm getting these seminars available for viewing. If you went to the seminar scheduled, I've got a link to all the videos, and I'll get this one posted as well. And I'll also be sure to send you a PDF of the slides from this morning's seminar to you for your use. We're good on time, so I've got open question and answers, whether it's on the handicap review tool or anything else handicap committee, handicapping related. I'll be glad to answer.
Hey,
Yep. So
Jim, quick
yeah,
question for you. When the tool, and I know it's the new tool, so you might not know, but when it says, okay, we want to take these 16 golfers down by whatever, can you drill in and it says, and the reason why is blah, 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 blah.
yeah. So let me go back to that slide. I think I can jump right to it here. Yeah. So your results will be like this, and then you can filter you'll be able to filter your results by gender.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the details button here that'll pop out, and then it'll give you some extra details. It actually will show compare competition versus casual rounds. It'll show you the history. You can see those flagged scores. You can analyze things that way, and you don't have to make the adjustment, the application of the app. You don't have to apply or deny right away. You can take your time, look at
Right.
the golfer outside of that. So that answer your question there?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I
Okay.
just want to make sure that, because obviously you'll then want to go talk to the golfer and they're going to say, well, why? And say, because the
Right.
box said
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, exactly. So you can click the details button to get the review tool details, and then you can also click on the golfer here to get to their scoring record.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim, it's
Yep.
Hank. I've
You
got a
bet.
question.
Yeah.
What does the USGA do to clubs that don't perform handicap reviews? What if you haven't
Uh,
done it for 5 years?
um, there's nothing specific, I'm going to say, Hank. It's our job here as the CGA is to make sure clubs are following the rules of handicapping. But that's kind of one of those things that's kind of impossible to monitor. Um, and yeah, you could say, oh, I've looked at the scoring records. I've reviewed everybody, but yeah, there's, the CGA, we have the ability to deauthorize clubs from issuing handicaps. That's one of our abilities, but that's something that would be done in very, very rare situations, to be honest.
So
I prefer to
required,
kind of, yeah,
so
we kind of
Jim,
prefer,
so Jim,
just,
required isn't really required. It's actually suggested uh, so that you keep integrity of the golf game, but you can't require it because there's really no penalty for not complying.
yeah, it's just like I said, it's impossible to enforce. But I will say that this new review tool um is going to be required to be run once a year, and there's going to be something that'll be able to keep track of that we'll be able to be informed of enough to say, hey, whatever country club, you need to run this review tool on your roster this year to remain compliant. So that's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but it's going to be required to be run once a year. So it'll
right,
kind of
Jim?
force this going forward, so to speak. Yes.
Jim,
Hank, again, I got a question on a different topic. What
Uh,
definition of organized competition does the USGA recommend? Is there some sort of threshold or limit?
Are you talking about so competition scores versus casual
Yes.
rounds?
Yes.
They really want competition rounds to be the more important, significant events at a club, member guests, club championships, um, kind of big events along that line. They don't really want league play, so to speak, to be marked as competition scores. I understand some clubs do it so they can keep track of league scores and see how players are doing, but the C scores are really supposed to be meant for the kind of a more serious competition. Yeah, that's the intent.
Jim,
Yes.
this is Skip. Would you expect, maybe when we have a situation where we have to do a modification, players, would it, using the tool in the admin portal, would it be best to have the pro shop actually do the work and make the changes rather than anybody from the committee? Would that make sense?
The handicap committee, this is the handicap committee's job, to run this, to oversee the handicap indexes.
We do the work. We run the data, we look at the reviews, we look at everything else, but when we actually go to do the modification, click on modify or whatever, would it be best to have the pros do that for us, or you just leave it up to the committee to do it, make sure we do it right?
Yeah, I would leave it up to the committee,
Okay, that's
to
fine.
decide. Yeah. The pro shop doesn't need to have any, there's nothing, yeah, there's no difference there.
Yeah, I just meant actually going into the admin portal and doing what we wanted.
Yeah, that's
Actually,
certainly,
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's certainly fine for the handicap committee to do that. Yeah, hopefully, yeah, I encourage handicap committees to have access to that admin portal, to do handicap committee work.
Hey, Jim, I got a question regarding when players move up a tee, go from white to gold or gold to red, and that affects their scoring. Is that where an instance you may not want to monitor their handicap review or give an excuse for not changing their handicap index?
That's a good question. This handicap index shouldn't significantly or at all really be changed because we're taking, playing a shorter tee, we're using a shorter, lower course and slope rating. In effect, the golfer's handicap index wouldn't change that much. But that could be a factor you might you could consider. They happen to, maybe they're a long hitter, but their short game isn't as great, but so they get a little more of an advantage off playing a shorter tee than maybe other golfers did. But yeah, that could be something you could just keep in mind.
Happened to me. It happened to me. That's why I'm asking. I had 5 low scores in my last review and 2 high scores. And the 5 low scores were pretty much after I moved up a tee when I turned 75. So I applied the handicap review, and so it modified me down 1. But I could modify it and take it off, or put it in for a period of another 40, 60 days.
Yeah, Patrick, let me take a look at your scores and follow back up with you. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting as to how that worked out. And but I'll appreciate how it can work both ways, going back a tee, or because I had higher scores on my back tees versus the lower scores on my up front tees.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Jim. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, actually, Jim, I think this is an interesting question that Patrick raises, because we currently have a situation arising where an individual has just moved up from the men's 3 tees to the 4s and is concerned because his handicap is pretty low and he thinks it should be a little higher because he's not able to hit as far, etc. And I'm curious, I mean, we got to respond to that. I'm curious how the tool can help inform that process for that individual. He's a pretty good golfer, but he argues, he's asking for, to be blunt, age to be a consideration because he can't hit as far to change his handicap. And, you know, it's always difficult as you're trying to work through these issues for people.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I don't know how much of help the tool's going to be there, because a tool is simply looking at the score differential and the handicap index. It's not looking at the change of tees or tees at all. But yeah, no, if you want to follow up with me on that, I can look at that scoring record too and see what I can figure out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jim,
Yes.
on the new tool, will we be able to run it by golf groups? We have over 2,000 gym members, and I'd like to disperse it out to like the men's group and the women to monitor some of their own groups rather than having to look at all 2,000 at once.
Yeah. I don't
All
know.
the other reports you can run by golfer groups.
Right. I don't know that 100% for sure, Jack. I'm gonna have to. I'm not thinking they showed us that, but maybe but that'd be something I'll have to look at.
Well, I mean, I can internally export
Yeah.
it to Excel and flag the people and distribute it out that way, but I was just wondering.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll try to find out, and of course we'll learn about the tool here in
Okay.
in a couple of
Fine.
weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm trying to... Yeah, we might there. I don't think they have that in the filter.
I didn't see it. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, but we'll see.
Okay.
Paul asked, with the new handicap review tool, can you select which golfers to review, such as in a prior member to member? Yeah, kind of the similar question to Jack. Probably not. But you can filter the results by golfer here. So, but yeah, that's something we've talked about internally is clubs will want to run this prior to the members and member guests. There might be a way to they might look at being able to narrow down the review on a subset of golfers, be it a group or entrance in a competitors in an event. Okay.
One more question, Jim.
Yeah.
Does the time of the season may affect the high score?
It may, sure.
And my high scores were in the wintertime.
Yeah, that's certainly not uncommon. It's colder out. We've got layers on. We're not swinging as freely. Yeah, that's certainly something the handicap committee can look at in making any determination, whether it's based on what the tool comes back with or any sort of a modification. Yeah, this is, some golfers just don't play too well in the winter. And other golfers can get by okay. So that's certainly something you can weigh in. Absolutely.
Okay.
Jim, it's Hank with another question. Does the USGA recommend adjusting the last 20 scores or freezing? Is either one of those two approaches preferable?
There's no preference there, Hank, as to which one you use. It all kind of, it doesn't make, it's all up to the committee what they find to be the best way to go. Yeah, it could work. It can work for lowering a golfer's handicap index to adjust those last 20 score differentials, or a golfer who needs some relief temporarily, bump them up by their last 20 score differentials, and those kind of slowly fall off. So it all kind of, whatever your comfort level, whatever your preference is. There's no guidance as to which one's preferred. Very good.
Okay, I've got another question.
Yeah.
How does the USGA determine that a score is too low and needs a flag? Have they ever described the method they use to make that determination?
No, and they won't. Yeah, you just have to think about it, and is that you know, the golfer has a handicap index, and this is going to be their expected score based on that handicap index, and it's just a range from there, and I don't know what that range is. Might be something if you found a golfer that had a lot of flags, you might be able to kind of take a guess at it, but yeah, there's no yeah, it's outside of range, whatever that range is.
Yeah, I've found a few golfers that have a lot of scores that are out of range, and I haven't been able to discern a pattern. And so if I use the USGA tool to make an adjustment and I say, we adjusted your score because the USGA told us to, and they said you had too many flags, and the golfer says, why? I'm going to say, because they said you had too many flags.
Outside an expected scoring range. I'll try to come up with some good verbiage for you. And I think that's actually part of the new tool coming out. Is some more letters and sample letters that we'll be able to send to the golfers that have a adjustment based on the tool. I think that's coming up for us as well. That'll be helpful for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Review tool. Why? Anybody else? Any other questions?
One more question, Jim.
Yeah.
For the handicap committees to get access to the GIN tool, to the admin portal, how do we do that?
You probably just need to catch up with your pro or the staff at the club.
I asked the pro, and he's like, "Yeah, I got no idea how to do that."
Yeah, because that's not some place they go to often. They would go to, if they're in the admin portal, they can go into a account and then manage users and add them. If they get in a jam, they can chat with us. They can give us a shout, and we'll be glad to help them out.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's multiple levels of admins. You can be an admin and just an admin read only, or admin with reports, or an admin with score edits and posting, or full admin access. So, but yeah, hopefully like to have the handicap committee have admin access. That's absolutely
Perfect.
a good thing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Very good. I'll stay here for a couple minutes if there's any late questions. Nothing else in the chat. You're welcome to those that said thank you. Again, here's my email address, jim.douglas, Douglas with 2 S's at carolinasgolf.org. Our main office is 910-673-1000. Our GIN support or member services office area is 910-687-4040. So that gets either myself or Kevin or Anna Catherine, and any one of us are be glad to help you out. Our website, of course, is carolinasgolf.org. South Carolina members can also visit scgolf.org, and women in South Carolina can also visit wscga.org. Yeah, so that's it. I hope everybody got something out of this one. This was one of my more useful seminars. I was hoping when I scheduled this that the new tool would be active and out and ready, but it's not. But I have seen the sneak preview of it. And like I said, I shared a couple, like you saw, I shared a couple slides from that, but look for more details on that. Probably the second week in April, I'll have some follow-up emails with details on the new review tool. All right, I think that's it. I'll let everybody go. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you to all you handicap committee people for your volunteer efforts and at keeping our rules of handicapping in place. Much appreciated. All right, everybody take care.
I know.
Thanks.